Me and technology don't go very well together, you probably guessed. My son said to me a long time ago about PowerPoint, he said, forget the power, just get to the point. And he's absolutely right. Can I touch, we've just heard some detail about how this can be dealt with. We had an example given in relation to policing. Our next speaker is Chris Miller, who you saw very briefly earlier on. He's a domain expert. He was a very senior police officer in the United Kingdom, led murder investigation teams, serious organised crime and organised fraud and drug distribution and organised crime more generally. He's also had a significant interest in technology going back many, many years. Sometimes the police in the UK don't listen to you, Chris, because you're so far ahead of them. But let's hear from Chris telling us really what a public sector can learn from the work that AHB are doing.
Perfect. So the reason that tech and government should be important friends is that in the UK, in many countries, 1 in 3 workers works for the state, and 1 in 3 pounds, 1 in 3 dirhams, 1 in 3 dollars is spent by the state in delivering the services. Most of you will be aware that most things over the last 20, 25 years have got cheaper and more efficient. Many consumer products in the UK, the public sector has become less productive over the last 20 years than it was 20 years ago. And some of the reason for that, apart from life getting more complex, is that it hasn't been very good, the state, at adopting technology at the speed at which the rest of society does. Now there's lots of good reasons for that, which is that public servants are very suspicious of things that change quickly. And there's quite a good reason for that, because you actually want society to be pretty stable. If it can change like the wind at the speed of light, then that's not very great, because it means your systems aren't sort of rooted. But there are problems as well. So the government, the UK government, this is, in one slide, the government strategy around using tech better. Obviously the one in the middle, public services, transforming government's use of data to drive efficiency and improve public services. We know in the UK that our public services are not as efficient as they should be, and they're not as efficient and effective as they should be. But the government has got lots of other, well, there's 5 altogether, 5 elements to their strategy in relation to developing tech in the UK. And I won't read them out, but you can see them there. So the reason it's so complicated, or so complicated than people do, is that the UK state is a jigsaw that isn't yet fully made up of lots of different organisations who all have different responsibilities. And you can see there, so there are 316 local authorities. Now localism is good because it means that local people have got true access to leaders and resources. But if you've got 316 of them, then getting consistency, and they've all got their own IT department and they all know best, so they're all going to buy a different IT system. And in fact, there aren't 316 local authorities. There's actually 3 different types of local authority. So there's 131 of one type, and then subtract 131 from the 316, and that's the other type, Tier 1 and Tier 2 authorities. They've all got their own IT systems. There are 43 different police forces. Again, there's great strength in having local police forces, because it means local people can influence local decisions. But you can see, if you're trying to develop consistency and interoperability across the tech piece, that makes life difficult. And there are hospital organisations. They're really important because lots of social issues end up with hospitals and health organisations, mental health service, anyway, you can count the numbers. So that just is part of our fractured jigsaw in the UK. Lots of organisations need to work together, they need to be interoperable, but frequently can't be because they have legacy IT systems, and they all have an IT head of IT who knows best. We all want interoperability, they say, just choose my way and it'll be fine. Now, COVID changed things quite a lot in many ways for tech in the UK. So there's a thing that happens in the life of a child who is failing to thrive or is at risk, which is called a strategy meeting involving lots of different local So the police, the local authority, social care, education all come together to decide what should happen in relation to that child's life. And for years and years, they all had to get together in a room, even though technology allowed for video conferencing and the like, but they would not do it. Local authority partners would not do it. COVID changed all that, so and now they all meet virtually, which means it's much more effective, because if you're a teacher, you haven't got to hack across the county in order to get into a room with somebody. You can actually do it on the internet. So COVID changed quite a lot of public sector thinking about how technology could be used. But the government strategy, which wants to drive forward further tech development, has identified that the problem with trying to get public sector workers to be more cooperative in the way they use tech is that there is a skills gap. They quite often, people locally working are not as skilled as they should be. There's a huge deep-set cultural issue around information sharing through tech, that local workers, it's sort of hardwired into their system that you can't share information because there are too many barriers to it, and it doesn't matter, even if they're quite young and they're used to sort of sharing stuff on Facebook and Instagram and everything, you get them into a public sector role, somehow they learn from their seniors, which sometimes is good. People learn from their seniors, that's what you want people to do, but they learn the wrong lesson, that you can share information. And it's hardwired, it's sort of almost in the DNA of public service. And you've got data quality. Now, I've just done a review of cases in London of teenagers that got murdered over the last 18 months. And so there were 31 cases I looked at, 29 boys, 2 girls, and you could not work out the ethnicity of an awful lot of those children because there was no systematic way of recording the ethnicity of children. Now, that's quite an important demographic, because if you're trying to speak to communities and understand where children have got their roots, you need to know where they've come from. And if you and you couldn't even work out from the narrative necessarily what the ethnicity of the child was. In a couple of them, they wouldn't even say what their sex was. But I mean, it's impossible to work out. So you've got a data quality issue, and people are terrified about security as well, quite rightly, because information does leak out from the public sector. So that's a concern that we need to sort out. But when the government does put money into improving the way that data is used, they don't invest in the foundations of data, which is about retrievability, accessibility, and interoperability. What they do is they improve the website, and they give more training to their staff rather than actually getting to the fundamentals of what they need. And that's where we are. So, MAAHR, sorry, you know what word I mean. I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. That is a real data foundation. So if you actually want to share data, you need capacity, functionality, and analysis. So somebody was saying to me, these gentlemen here was talking about the 80-20 rule, that 20% of the data is structured and retrievable and 80% of it is junk because it's unstructured. And there's a reason for having unstructured data in the public sector, because sometimes these narratives are really complicated. The narrative of a child that ends up getting murdered who's had a long history of mental ill health in the family, so it's a very complicated narrative. But unless we can structure that data, then it's very difficult to work out the full picture. And in order to structure it, you need capacity, functionality, and analysis, which is where HPC comes in. So Satish has already talked about university research. Universities in Britain are brilliant at doing research. They're not great at transferring their research. This is a long-standing issue, returning their research into marketable product and into advancement. So this is just a picture of, this is Cambridge University's data. This is how they show what their data looks like. It's in pictorial form, so you can work that out. But and Satish mentioned the Kent algorithm. I'm going to talk about banned drivers in a second. That was some work that was done by Nottingham University, Nottingham Scientific. So here we go. Theft of cars. Satish briefly mentioned that. So we have 135,000 cars a year stolen in the UK, or taken from their place of last resting, and 82% of them are never seen again. Okay, sorry, that's 72% of them are never seen again, and they're worth £20,000 each. so quite high value. And what happens is they get shipped abroad, they get put on a boat. Sometimes before the victim of the theft even knows, they wake up in the morning and that car is already on a container at Felixstowe dock on its way to somewhere exotic. They get dismantled, cars are worth more money for their parts sometimes, or they get cloned, they get given a new identity, so they drive around as if they were some other car. And all that requires organisation. So a Premiership footballer had his car recovered. This is a container at Felixstowe, and it was recovered with a day or two of him losing it. It was a speculative search of a container. But it's a huge problem. It's done by organised crime, and the police do not have the resources to tackle it. So this is where Convoy XA come in. So car thieves are organised, and they behave in predictable ways. They don't just at random steal a Range Rover. They suss it out. They drive there in their own car because they're not going to get a taxi or a bike, and they're not going to walk. They're going to go there in their own car, and they want to get rid of it straight away. So they take it to a middleman who pays them cash, £2,000, £3,000 for a £20,000 car, and then they drive back. That is a pattern of behaviour that can be found through an ANPR camera. You're familiar what an ANPR camera is? Every car that goes past gets photographed, and so Kent University have developed an algorithm which we are now using to, with high-powered computing, to find car convoys. I had a car convoy. Well, is that meant to be a car convoy? So car convoys don't behave like ordinary queues of cars. If you and I are travelling together deliberately to a particular place, I keep you in sight, and we will behave in a predictable way that is retrievable. That information is retrievable by using data from ANPR cameras and an algorithm that can find car convoys. That can then be sent to the police real time. There is a suspicious convoy going down this particular road at the moment, which almost certainly contains a stolen car. Or alternatively, you can do it historically, and you can find the bandit cars, the taxi cars, and in due course, we will be able to find the phones that are in the cars using this algorithm. So we'll be able to find the criminals. That's where we're going with that one. This is another piece of work we've done. So parents who've got a substance misuse problem, whose children are sort of coming to harm, we've done some work. This is an alcohol monitor. Parents breathe into it 3 times a day. It gets transferred via the web to a central place where the social worker can see whether or not that parent is consuming too much alcohol, and see whether the children that are with that parent are at risk, or even if they've been taken away, whether those parents are now able to have those children back. So again, that uses multiple streams of data. And a similar one with this thing here is a drug test system that can read fingerprint sweat, and it can work out live time whether somebody has got drug metabolites in their system. So if you're worried that a parent is consuming heroin or cocaine or crystal meth or whatever, this can find it. That information can go to the social worker straight away, and they can intervene if they need to. Or in long term, they can work out whether the parents are on a decreasing use of drugs and can have their children back or not lose them. And taking a child into care costs £60,000 a year in the UK, so we want to avoid that. And last one, so Cranfield, Nottingham Scientific, people who get banned from driving, lots of them will not stop driving. So how do you stop them driving? Well, you use, this is a smart tag. They wear it around their ankle. It's got an algorithm in it. It's got a gyroscope and a GPS locator. So it measures the leg angle, works out if the foot's gone from right to left. I think it's right to left in every car. Does the tag then decelerate? If so, that's an act of driving as opposed to the act of being a passenger on a bus. It then records the journey, sends that through to the police, and the police can then intervene the following day. They don't go chasing them across country because that adds to risk. They'll arrest them the following morning in their bed for driving whilst disqualified. And because they know they're going to get arrested in their bed the following morning, that is a deterrent. So we're working with Lincolnshire Police on that one. So it's all about finding the digital breadcrumbs, really. That's what MAAHR does, find the digital breadcrumbs, and then you can find the valuable loaf, which nourishes us all. Thank you.